The idea of turning a wrecked Ferrari 812 Superfast into a running, rebuilt, reimagined machine in a single 24-hour push sounds almost impossible on paper. But that's exactly what makes this story worth telling. Because this isn't just about fixing a damaged supercar. It's about uncertainty, risk, problem-solving under pressure, and the moment-by-moment decisions that separate a dead project from something that roars back to life. A V12 Ferrari is never just another car. It's a machine built around emotion as much as engineering. Over 800 horsepower, naturally aspirated. No turbo noise hiding the experience, just pure mechanical theater. That's why when a crashed 812 Superfast appeared at a salvage auction, it didn't matter how risky it looked. It only mattered that there was a chance. The listing was tempting in the most dangerous way. Runs and drives. Low mileage. Front-end damage that didn't look catastrophic at first glance. And like most salvage cars, it was sold on optimism more than certainty. That's a trap, because what you see in photos is never the full truth of what's hiding underneath. When the car finally arrives, reality sets in immediately. The rear still looks like a Ferrari. The front looks like a different story entirely. Panels shifted, structure stressed, fluids where they shouldn't be. But even then, there's a strange excitement in the air, because the question is no longer why buy this. It becomes, can we actually save it? Getting it out of park becomes the first real challenge. A simple task on any normal car turns into a mechanical puzzle when dealing with a Ferrari gearbox that refuses to cooperate without the proper procedure. Tools are pulled from hidden compartments, carpets lifted, access points exposed that most owners will never even know exist. Slowly, carefully, the car is forced into neutral so it can be moved and properly inspected. But as soon as it rolls, the deeper problems start revealing themselves. Oil is found where oil should never be. Inside the intake system, around the air filter housing. And not just a light trace, but a heavy contamination that immediately raises concern. Then the dipstick tells a worse story. The oil isn't just low. It's milky, thick, contaminated with water. That's not a cosmetic issue. That's internal engine risk. At this point, the rebuild stops being cosmetic and starts becoming diagnostic. The airbox comes apart piece by piece. Every layer of filtration, every duct, every connection is checked. And the deeper everything is inspected, the more confusing the situation becomes. Because there's no obvious single point of failure. No clean explanation for how water and oil ended up mixed inside a high-performance V12 that, on paper, should still be mechanically sound. So the only option is to go deeper. Spark plugs are removed one by one. 12 cylinders. No shortcuts. Each plug becomes a window into the health of the engine. If one cylinder shows damage, the entire rebuild changes direction. If all are clean, there's hope. And slowly, surprisingly, the pattern holds. Clean cylinder after clean cylinder. No sludge. No visible internal failure. That's the first real moment of relief. But relief doesn't mean safety. Because even if the cylinders are clean, the fluids are not. Fresh oil is added carefully, not as a fix, but as a controlled test. Just enough to safely attempt to start. Not to run it hard. Not to trust it. Just to see if it will wake up at all. And it does. The V12 fires. It runs. It shakes the workshop with a deep mechanical rhythm that immediately changes the mood. For a moment, everything feels possible again. But that moment is short-lived. Because what comes out of the engine during that first run is not clean oil behavior. It's contamination being pushed through the system. Thick, inconsistent discharge through breather systems and PCV pathways, suggesting that something inside the oil circuit has been compromised. At this point, the theory starts forming. Either the car has been inverted or severely tilted in its crash, forcing fluids into places they don't belong, or there's a hidden issue in cooling or sealing systems allowing contamination to enter the lubrication cycle. Either way, the only solution is repetition. Drain, flush, refill, run, observe, repeat. But before that cycle can continue, the rebuild begins. The front end is stripped completely, bonnet removed, headlights out, structural panels exposed. What was once a sculpted supercar becomes a raw mechanical frame. Radiators show visible damage. Cooling systems are compromised. Brackets are bent. Aluminum structures show signs of force that explain part of the story, but not all of it. The The more it's dismantled, the clearer it becomes that this isn't just a crash repair. It's a reconstruction of multiple systems at once: cooling, structure, electronics, safety systems, and interior architecture. Then comes a realization that changes everything about the project timeline. This is not just cosmetic restoration. It's structural repair under time pressure. With help from fabrication specialists, damaged chassis sections are assessed. Instead of simply bending aluminum back into shape, new sections are fabricated to match original geometry. Precision matters here more than speed, because if alignment is even slightly off, everything that follows, body panels, suspension geometry, aerodynamics, will fail to fit correctly. Welding begins. Cutting, measuring, realigning. Every decision carries weight. This isn't guesswork. It's controlled reconstruction of load-bearing structures. While the front end is being rebuilt, the interior becomes its own battlefield. Airbags deployed, dashboard compromised, seat belts locked under crash data conditions. Everything inside the cabin is triggered into post-collision safety mode, and every component has to be removed, reset, or replaced. Seats come out first, then seat belts, then the center console, then the dashboard itself, which turns out to be far more complex than expected. Behind every panel is another layer of wiring, sensors, modules, and connectors. Nothing is simple. Everything is interconnected. Even the airbag system requires external reset procedures. Crash data cannot just be cleared like a normal fault code. It has to be physically extracted, reset externally, and reintroduced into the system. At the same time, bodywork continues outside. Rear diffuser removed. Structural elements inspected. Cosmetic damage assessed. But even here, upgrades begin to creep in. Carbon fiber components replace damaged factory parts. The identity of the car starts to shift from factory original restoration to something more aggressive, more personalized, more intentional. Then comes a decision that changes everything visually. The color change, from standard black to a bold green finish. Not safe, not traditional, but deliberate. Because this rebuild isn't just about returning a Ferrari to factory condition. It's about creating something that stands out as a finished story, not just a repaired one. As wrapping begins, the car slowly transforms again. Panel by panel, the damaged black shell disappears under new surface. Carbon accents appear. Rear diffuser upgraded. Trim pieces reinstalled with a sharper visual direction. Meanwhile, structural work at the front reaches completion. Newly fabricated aluminum sections are installed, aligned, and welded into place. Headlight mounts are corrected. Mounting points restored. Everything begins to take shape again as a complete vehicle rather than disconnected parts. The windscreen is replaced. Interior components return. Dashboard is reinstalled with painstaking attention to bolt placement, wiring, routing, and alignment. Seat belts are refitted with reset explosive modules. Airbag systems are reconnected. Not just installed, but resynchronized with the car's electronic brain. And then comes a moment where everything converges. Interior complete. Exterior reassembled. Structural repairs finished. Fluids flushed multiple times. Systems reset. New components installed. Nothing left disconnected. The ignition is toned. The engine fires again. But this time, it's different. Cleaner. More stable. More controlled. The earlier contamination issues begin to settle as fresh oil cycles through the system. Breathing stabilizes. Exhaust note becomes consistent. Mechanical noise reduces to normal V12 character. And for the first time since the car arrived, it feels like a Ferrari again instead of a problem waiting to happen. As final touches are added, wheels fitted, trim aligned, panels tightened, the transformation becomes obvious. What started as a broken salvage auction car has become a fully rebuilt, visually redesigned, structurally repaired supercar ready to re-enter the world. Not perfect in the sense of untouched originality, but perfect in the sense of rescued engineering brought back to life through persistence, skill, and controlled chaos. And when it finally sits complete, under light, with its new color, carbon accents, rebuilt structure, and restored engine note, the story stops being about damage. It becomes about survival, because this wasn't just a rebuild. It was a rescue, and it proves something simple but powerful. Even the most damaged machines still have a second life in them, if someone is willing to fight for it. Bob's hands move slowly but with confidence, pressing the filler into the damaged aluminum quarter panel like he's done it 1,000 times before. The Ferrari looks less like a supercar now and more like a skeleton mid-reconstruction. Stripped, exposed, vulnerable. Every movement matters here. One wrong shape, one uneven layer, and the entire side of this car will betray the wrap later. And with the clock still running, there's no room for mistakes. At the front of the car, the fresh paint is drying under workshop lights. It looks almost deceptive, too clean compared to the chaos still happening everywhere else. New parts sit in boxes, waiting their turn, like pieces of a puzzle that refuses to fit together easily. Inside the cabin, the transformation is already starting to feel real again. The dashboard is back in, the seat belts reinstalled, and the steering wheel airbag locked into place. But even then, nothing about this rebuild feels finished. Not even close. Because this isn't just reassembly anymore. It's a test of whether everything they repaired actually holds. Back at the rear quarter, Bob wipes his hands and steps back for a moment. The filler has begun to set. The once deep crease is now only visible as a faint shadow, still there, but no longer screaming for attention. Still, he isn't satisfied. He leans in again, running his fingers across the surface. Not smooth enough. Not yet. A second layer goes on. Thinner, more controlled, more precise. And while he works, the reality of this build starts to sink in. This Ferrari didn't just suffer cosmetic damage. It was twisted, flooded, and mechanically confused from the inside out. Every system they've touched has raised more questions than answers. But somehow, it still runs. That alone keeps this project alive. At the front, Liam and the team are already shifting focus to alignment. Headlights are temporarily mounted, panels loosely fitted, just to check the geometry. Nothing is final yet, but everything is being measured against something invisible. Factory perfection. And it's close. Closer than expected. Still, one wrong gap line, one misaligned bolt, and the illusion breaks instantly. Time keeps slipping. The wrap stage is approaching faster than anyone is ready for. Outside, the new green vinyl sits rolled out, catching light differently depending on the angle. Deep, aggressive, almost alive. It doesn't look like a color choice anymore. It looks like a statement. But before it can even touch the car, everything beneath it must be perfect. No scratches hidden. No dents forgotten. No mistakes buried. Back at the rear, Bob finally nods. Ready to sand. The filler has cured just enough. The sound of sanding begins, soft at first, then more consistent. A rhythm forms. The kind of sound that signals progress, but also exposes truth. Because sanding doesn't lie. It reveals everything underneath. And slowly, the panel starts to transform. From damaged to restored. Not perfect yet, but close enough to believe in again. Meanwhile, the workshop grows louder with parallel progress. Doors opening and closing. Tools clicking into place. Bolts being sorted. Parts being checked off like a countdown that refuses to stop. This is where builds either collapse or come alive. And right now, no one is sure which direction the Ferrari is heading. Then, a pause. A moment where everything seems to slow. Bob steps back again. This time, he smiles slightly. It's not perfect, but it's ready for the next stage. And in a rebuild like this, that's all that matters. Because perfection doesn't happen in one step. It happens in survival. And this Ferrari is still surviving. The last pieces finally come together. The wrap is finished, stretching across every curve of the Ferrari like it was always meant to be there. The deep green catches the workshop lights in a way paint never quite could, shifting, reflecting, almost breathing as you walk past it. What used to be a wrecked, oil-stained, flood-questioned salvage car now looks like something completely different. Not new, but reborn. The front end sits aligned, tight panel gaps pulling everything back into factory intention. The repaired chassis sections no longer scream damage. They disappear under fresh structure and precise welding. Even Bob's work, hidden behind panels and brackets, now carries the weight of everything holding this car together. Inside, the cabin feels complete again. The dashboard is locked in, seats bolted, seat belts reset, airbags replaced. Every bolt Liam insisted he remembered is somehow in place. Nothing rattles. Nothing feels temporary anymore. It feels assembled. But nobody is celebrating yet, because the real question is still sitting in the air. Will it actually drive like a Ferrari 812 Superfast should? The moment of truth arrives quietly. No dramatic speech. No countdown. Just keys, ignition, and a shared pause that says more than words ever could. One turn. The V12 wakes up. Not instantly perfect. There's a breath, a hesitation, like the engine itself is remembering what it's supposed to be. Then it settles. Smooth idle. Deep, mechanical confidence building through the workshop floor. That sound changes everything. Not the crash history. Not the flood doubts. Not the bent metal it once carried. Just 12 cylinders, alive again. They roll it forward slowly at first. Every eye watching for hesitation, leaks, warning lights, anything that shouldn't be there. Nothing. It moves. Steering responds cleanly. Brakes bite properly. The rebuilt structure holds under real motion, not just stands in place pretending to be ready. Outside the workshop doors, the world feels different for a moment. This isn't a salvage rebuild anymore. It's a recovery story that worked. The car stops. Everyone waits for the problem that usually shows up at the worst possible time. It doesn't come. Instead, the engine idles like nothing ever happened to it. And then, finally, a small nod, a shared understanding. It's done. Not perfect, not untouched, but alive. The Ferrari 812 Superfast, once written off by circumstance, now sits in the light again, rebuilt not just with parts, but with problem-solving, patience, and a refusal to accept what it was supposed to be. The camera lingers for a second longer, on the green paint, on the carbon details, on the V12 heartbeat that refuses to quit. And then, cut to silence, because some builds don't need a loud ending. They just need to prove they made it back.